United demolished 3-0 by Manchester City. Let's get into it now. I'm delighted to be joined by Joe Smith from the Stretford Paddock podcast to look back over it. Joe, very good afternoon. Firstly, how are you feeling this morning, mate? Bit of a thumping, but if you're being honest, were you expecting anything different?
No, but you don't always, teams that aren't necessarily better can still win games, can't they? And I think the nature of the defeat and the fact that it is just so many big games now recently have been like this, whether it be Liverpool last season, City last season. The cup final wasn't really a thumping, but again, another loss. And then you see this so far this season, we've been dominated by Brighton at home. We've been dominated by City. It was a close game in the end, scoreline-wise, but we were dominated by BeIN in the Allianz. Whenever we play a good team, we get comfortably beaten. And I think, yeah, they're better than us, but also we've seen the worst team winning, and United didn't even look close to that yesterday.
Why do you think that is that at the moment Ten Hag and Manchester United are struggling so much against these bigger sides? It almost seems like there's a panic that sets in.
There's definitely a panic that sets in. That's part of it because, a well-drilled team with a worse sort of squad can still win games, as we've seen thousands of times throughout football. There's upsets constantly in football. But we're just not seeing it with United. And I think there's loads of different small problems, some big problems as well. But I think the scary issue for me is it's not like, when they come back, we'll be all right. Last season, we kind of got to a point, if you remember the Arsenal game at the Emirates, where Casemiro got suspended for that game. And everyone, United fans, Arsenal fans, neutral fans, so they're really going to struggle without Casemiro. He's the main man. And at the minute, there's no one player that's missing. Even players that are playing, you think if they come back or come back to form, one person isn't going to do it. And then obviously there's all the stuff going on upstairs as well, which needs to be mentioned, but can't be sort of relied on as, just because the Glazers are in charge, that doesn't mean, Marcus Rashford can't shoot. However, there seems to be so many problems that do kind of interlink and do stack on top of each other. And we've got to a point where sort of 10 things need changing before we're going to see the sort of consistent change of results and of form. And like you said, that the fear and the panic that sets in when United are losing, that comes from sort of external pressure of United being the biggest club in the world and sort of having the standards. We still hold them to this standard where Man United should be trying to win a trophy every season because that's Man United and that's what they do. And yet the squad and the history of the last few years suggests that that's maybe an unrealistic expectation. I don't know. This I'm sort of rambling because there are so many things I could keep talking, keep listing these issues that we've got. But the truth is there's a lot and it's going to take a while to fix it.
It's interesting, though, that you mentioned the problems upstairs and the blame, actually, that we saw yesterday from a few voices from Manchester United, Gary Neville being one of them. What did you make of that? Because, as you say, when you look at the performance on the pitch, yes, there's so much that you can blame the Glazers for, not saying that isn't the case. But actually, when you're looking at problems on the pitch, there's not much they can do in terms of the performance in the derby.
Well, not now. They can't. We can't get a new squad in for the Newcastle game on Wednesday. But if you look at the general trend of Manchester United over the last 10 to 15 years, especially sort of post-Fergie, it's one that trends towards cutting corners, doing things the way that, the least possible effort, the least possible success, but we tick the box, but nothing more. And it's been a general decline. And, on and off the pitch, United have gone from being the star of the Premier League in terms of facilities, in terms of success, in terms of people in charge, the people who do their jobs, they're all very good at it, to one where, we've got sort of this guy knows this guy, so he got the job through that, and we'll let Old Trafford, go from being one of the best stadiums in the country or the best stadium in the country to not even being picked for the Euros. The training facilities are 20 years old and need updating. The squad has been assembled by a string of managers who have all been given probably too much power in terms of who's in the squad. So you have to question, what's the scouting department doing? What is the director of football doing? Why does there seem to be no vision? And we're sort of, 10 years post Sir Alex, with seemingly no better plan of what we're going to be doing for the next 5 years than we did 5 years ago. Nothing seems to have got any better. And, you can't blame the Glazers for, losing to City. And like I said, they can't buy a new team for Wednesday. But the general trend towards chaos and disarray at Manchester United is certainly partly, if not entirely, down to them.
How are you feeling about Erik ten Hag at the moment? Because there are, a lot of factors within this that you can bring up questions about him for. Firstly, what is Manchester United's style, Joe? You can pin it down for so many other clubs, but with Manchester United at the moment, it is just so difficult to see what they're trying to do. And also yesterday, when he was talking about leaving Varane out and saying that Evans and Maguire starting was a tactical decision. What are you making of him as a manager at the moment?
Well, at the moment, it's not very impressive, is it? And some of the comments seem a bit odd. If you look back at last season, I think it was much easier to identify a style then. We'd win the ball back quickly. We would get the ball forward very quickly as well. And I think sometimes that's bordered on frantic and frenzied this season, where we get the ball back and instead of sort of counter-attacking quickly, we essentially just give it away quickly. So we never truly get a chance to see it. I think the minor details of who stands where and pressing mechanics and all that stuff, we can, speculate and guess, but we're not in the room. I think we've obviously seen a transition from deep-lying counter-attacking football under Jose and to a certain degree under Solskjaer to a higher line with ball-playing centre-back, ball-playing goalkeeper, winning the ball back high up the pitch. Those are the sort of fundamentals, but clearly the sort of specific details that take you from being, Sheffield United play a high line, or, certainly did under Wilder a couple of years ago and got relegated. So it's all well and good, doing these things, but when it's not working, any system can fail. The best system in the world fails if the players aren't confident, if the right players aren't playing it. So I think there is a bit of a style, but at the minute it looks messy because no one's got any confidence. And the players aren't, so a lot of them are injured that help implement the style. And the ones who aren't injured look like they can't be bothered being there. So, what under the same circumstances, I think during this sort of clip that you played before, another presumably United fan was talking about, what would Pep do with this team? What manager could you bring in that isn't Pep or Klopp or Arteta, because we're not getting them? What manager could you bring in that you think could win a Manchester derby with Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire at centre back, and Lindelof at left back? Like it's tricky, isn't it? United's squad just isn't that good.
No. And as you say, they've had the money and they've had the control given to Erik ten Hag to try and change that. It just simply hasn't worked. Yeah. One more question I have for you, Joe, by the way. Fernandes as captain. Now, for me yesterday, he was being petulant. He was trying to foul players at the end. Listen, you can sit there and say that he's got passion. Of course he has, but it seemed for me slightly pathetic by the end that he was doing that. And we've seen it before from him as well. It's not like it's a one-off. Anthony was then following his example, trying to foul the Man City players. What are your thoughts as a fan of him as a captain?
I think, well, again, we're almost at the point with Fernandes as we are with Ten Hag, where you're like, okay, yeah, maybe certain parts of his character don't make a great captain. And you go, okay, right, yeah, let's take the captain down off him. And then you go, right, who am I giving it to? Varane, who didn't even get picked for the derby and who is injured, quite regularly. He's the vice captain, so you could maybe give it him, but who gets it when he's not playing, which is half the time? Is it back to Bruno? Then you look around the rest of the team, and Rashford's in the worst form of his career, and people would be calling for him to have the armband off him if he was the captain now. Who are you giving it to? Like,
it's a good
senior
point.
Players in the squad, Luke Shaw, who's out at the minute and doesn't seem to be captain material. Marcus Rashford, who I've just explained. Bruno Fernandes has been there 4 years. Martial's been there 7 years. He ain't getting it. Like, I don't know who gets it. We're in a tricky position as United fans. Where last season there was no end of captains. You give it Casemiro, you give it Varane. Bruno looked good. You could give it to, I don't even know, maybe David De Gea, who's obviously now left. But now you go through the squad this season. There's no standout. So maybe Bruno's got his weaknesses, but I don't see who's going to wear that armband and make do it any more proud or treat it with more respect or whatever the phrase is. I don't see it at the moment at United.
It's really a good point. Do you think that maybe it's Erik ten Hag taking him to one side and saying, "Listen, mate, we're expecting a bit more from a captain here. You need to try and change your behaviour on the pitch." Do you think that's basically the only solution to it?
Maybe so. If he thinks he's stepping over the mark, you can maybe say, right, we need to not see this from you. I do think as well the days of the captain, who's wearing the armband being this sort of real galvanizing factor in squad. I think as the sort of complexity of tactics and the amount of go out there and enjoy yourself goes down and the tactics goes up. I think the captain is less of a role than it used to be. Look at Roy Keane. who would drag United to wins by himself. I think Man City's captain last season was Gundogan, and he wasn't even guaranteed to start for him. Whilst he's a very good player, it's not quite that same leader on the pitch thing, because everyone's more obsessed with, right, what did the manager say? Where do I have to stand? Where's the pass? It's more tactical and less personality driven now, I think, football. So maybe he needs to have a bit of a word with him. But I do think that, Bruno Fernandes at his best is Manchester United's best player. He continues to be. I think I saw the stat today. He's got 2 less chances created than James Maddison, who's got the most in the league. So he's still in that conversation for most creative players in the Premier League. There's not too much that needs changing. I just think a tweak here and there, a bit more confidence, some players around him to have a bit of confidence, and all of a sudden Bruno won't look like the worst captain in the world anymore.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.